Welcome to Insight with Saving Sage. I'm Rob Brinkman, my partner, Chad Tongo. So, Chad, do you know why I'm wearing this tie?
Yes, it's election year. It's the Olympics. I mean, we've got a whole lot of things going on in the United States of America.
Yeah, that's none of those reasons. Although those are good reasons. Those are good reasons, actually. I'll take the Olympics. I'll take the election. I'll take all that. It's because
Right.
our guest Brian is a patriot. I mean, he served in the Air Force, and I'm going to struggle today because we're going to be talking about deep intelligence security stuff.
Fun
And
stuff.
the two of you are going to geek out, and I'm going to be struggling to find anything constructive or productive to say.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, I'll tell you that. And I know with your sage hat on, Brian's going to be incredibly entertained with the questions that you're going to bring forth. So,
Yeah, there'll be questions. I'm sure he's not getting on a normal basis. So anyway, okay, all right. Let's bring on Brian. So Brian Morrison, CEO of D2Insights, welcome, author, systems engineer. We've been really looking forward to this. I know Chad has because the two of you are going to like geek out. It's going to be embarrassing. So I'm going to give you a platform to kind of frame off of, right? And we'll use what's so popular in the news today about AI. Everything's AI. And as if AI can like do your kids' homework and make you dinner at the same time. There's two types of AI, really. There's this chat GBT AI, which really, from my limited understanding, it's just this massive hypersonic Google search, right? It's just more data, faster, versus generative AI, which is actually really tight, right? Very narrow. But given that you coming from the security and system side, what are you seeing people being distracted with versus what they should actually be paying attention to?
Yeah, so thanks for the opportunity, and I'm really happy to be here. To specifically answer your question, I would say the biggest thing that I see people kind of biting off of is both the problem and the opportunity. Which kind of, as you highlighted, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what AI is, artificial intelligence as an umbrella term, and then also the various kind of subdomains inside of that, right? And again, much as you would imagine, if you opened up a big toolbox and you had a bunch of individual tools inside, every one is going to have a different use and is going to have the opportunity to be applied correctly, but also at the same time, yes, I can take a screwdriver, flip it upside down, and bang on a nail really hard and accomplish something, but it's not the most efficient use of resources, right? So there's a lot of capability within the kind of the larger toolbox of AI, but there's a lot of confusion out there in terms of which tool is best for what development cycles and resources and things are required for different applications, and then of course what's a good application for the right technology. And getting all that straight is non-trivial to say the least. But there's to put it simply, artificial intelligence is a and kind of the way to digitally scale kind of intelligence as a whole. So if you really use the right tool the right way, you can accomplish something that really to this point in human history has pretty much just been magic. So there really is a lot of promise and opportunity, but there's a lot of potential pitfalls there that you have to watch out for along the way.
Yeah. So Chad, I know you're going to have a bunch of questions. So I will just say out the gate, I knew I was going to like Brian because him just using a simple analogy in toolbox, because this takes me back to the days, as an executive, Brian, I hated talking to the tech people, right? Because they would give me all this fancy language, and all I'm thinking about is this person just wants to spend a bunch of really scarce capital and use a bunch of limited human resource to come up with some solution that I'm not even sure is going to work or not, but they make it sound really good because I can't track with them, right? It's like that. Mm-hmm. That TV commercial, it must be 15, 20 years ago. It was like when websites were first coming out. It was like this like long-haired guy in front of a computer, young 20-year-old, and he's designing the first website. And the older guy like me, the president of the company, standing behind him. And like the website has like flames and fireworks and doing this and that sound and all this stuff. And the CEO's like, man, this is incredible. So what you're saying is like our customers can actually come to a website and buy something. And the 20-year-old's like, oh, no, I didn't know you wanted to do that. I mean, it's just that's what's frustrating with technology. But anyway, I digress. So, Chad, what questions do you have for Brian?
yeah, I think we need to start off with I like how you position everything, right? There's no one size fits all type of situation with regards to generative AI use case, so on and so forth. But from your expert opinion, which industry segments do you think would benefit most from, this evolution, this AI evolution? But more importantly, I think more deliberate intention or more deliberate integration of generative AI within their respective business models.
Sure. So up to this point in history, like the real groundbreaking stuff, say, let's scope it to like, say, the last 10 to 20 years, has really all been in machine learning. And really most of the high value use cases there were all around kind of detection and optimization. So it was either I apply ML algorithms to detect, like if it was a visual medium, to detect a certain thing within the scope of the sensor. So I want to detect a deer walking across a scene in a field. I wanted to detect a person walking an area they should or should not be. And then, of course, you had data analytics where it was, I have a bunch of logistics systems. Let me help find the right optimization of, paths through a given workflow or things like that. But it was a lot of detection and optimization type things. And then when you get into generative AI, the real power, at least in the current generation of generative AI, is all around content generation. And that can take a lot of different forms. So it could be everything from, if you're trying to, let's say if you're in a business and you're trying to produce strategy documentation, if you're trying to produce any kind of policies or really thick tomes of really highly analytical information. So I have a bunch of source material. I would usually pay a guy or a team of guys to kind of crunch on this information and come up with a consolidated report plan or strategy or something like that. That's where you can get a lot of kind of blood from the stone, if you will, in terms of generative AI. You can also apply it to anything that's relatively short, but kind of a dense conversation. So customer service is a really good application for some of the best chat models. So anywhere where you'd have either a lot of interaction that it's all textual based. So again, online customer service, that kind of thing. And then producing a lot of written content, especially that would be taking a lot of source data, then compiling it into a new form. It's really, really good at that. But the important thing to remember about the current generation of AI is it's all turn based. I put something in, I get something out, I decide what I want to do with that. I might make another prompt and I get back in. What it will not do at all, which is completely beyond the scope of this generation, it's coming, but not in this current generation, is here's a problem, crunch on that for a while, iterate through solutions, then come back with an optimized output. That literally does not exist today. You can start to kind of build more complex systems, and there's third-party companies that will start to kind of get at that kind of thing. But when people talk about artificial general intelligence, or heaven forbid, even artificial super intelligence, you really have to get into those kinds of workflows where you can really provide a problem set to the model and have it crunch through a whole bunch of complex operations over a period of time. And we're just not there yet. We will get there, but we're just not there yet. So we're still in, like I said, what we call that first generation of business use cases where, okay, where would I pay people to do this large content generation, or how could I offset some of my customer service? Those are the two big things that, I don't want to say regardless of the amount of money spent on it, but you could really spend a decent amount of money and get a lot of return, or at least more than you put in relative to those kind of two major use case verticals.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. In terms of, if we look at the overall macro, I think evolution of technology, it comes down to two things, in my opinion, right? First thing is enhancing productivity and efficacy of our efforts as human beings. And then the other part of it is also enhancing comfort, right? And so the way, the one question I'd say that comes to mind often is, we hear Elon Musk's of the world, where they're coming up with robots, right? And how they're integrating artificial intelligence within these equipment or these robots. How do you foresee, these robots coming to life? I mean, they're projecting, right, within the next 5 to 7 years, they're going to be working alongside humans. How is that going to work? What kind of dynamic should we be expecting from a labor perspective, but also from a business kind of strategy perspective?
Sure. So I mean that robots, a lot of people like to talk about artificial general intelligence and kind of focus on the model, but again, the model is still software inside of a box somewhere. It is not something reaching out and interacting with the world. A robot is exactly that. It is the application of that digital intelligence, if you will, manifested in the real world. So I can tell, Roby the robot to go across over there, across the room and pick up a box and move it to somewhere else, or any number of complex functions like that has real tangible value in the real world versus, content generation is great, but it's not revolutionizing business overnight, right? If you had any kind of robot, almost regardless of price, that could fulfill the action sets of even the average high school worker, again, how many years, like even if it cost $100,000 for one robot, how, if it could provide the same amount of service as a high school student you would hire at McDonald's would literally, and every other fast food restaurant would literally just do the math of, okay, how many years do we have to aggregate the cost of this? And remember, from a taxes perspective, I can aggregate, I can use the purchase of that and then the deprecation of that, tax loss over time. I can't do that with a human. So there's all kinds of secondary kind of like business and tax effects that you can do when you start going to commodities instead of people that makes robots infinitely more advantageous and attractive from a business perspective. But again, it's really just how quickly can you escalate up the scale of capability. We just saw literally 2 days ago, Meta released their new one of their new vision models that was specifically about the identification and segmentation of objects within video, which doesn't sound like much or may even sound like gobbledygook. But the whole point is the model can instantaneously define me from the background, regardless of my movement, and can identify every single book on the bookshelf, every single object within the frame, and can track that in real time. Just 3 years ago, even the best military models in classified spaces could barely do that. Now it's literally free and open source. The best cutting edge model to achieve that actual effect in the world is free. So whether you're, a defense industry company looking to improve, their offerings to the defense industry, you're a commercial robot developer looking to, build out your robot capabilities in terms of navigation, identification, interaction with physical objects in space. Like there's so many things that if I'm trying to identify, track, and ultimately interact in whatever way that is with something in physical space, like that is such a critical technology. And that is a generative AI model. It's not a textual model, it's a visual model, but it is squarely within the generative AI field. It's the release of models like that and the developments that they ultimately unlock that kind of stair step you up these levels of capability that ultimately, as they stack and build up, provide that ability to start offering really complex actions in the real world through things like robotics. It won't be the only thing, but it starts allowing you to do that. And so it's really incumbent upon businesses, governments, everybody else to kind of look at these things and say, okay, where do we want to be in terms of capability, and how are we going to what are we looking for in terms of the watermarks and the benchmarks to start integrating those things?
Yeah. This is something that Rob is going to be able to speak into and also incredibly passionate about. And we share the same sentiment and position about it. With this most recent release that Meta put together, one word that comes to mind for me is invasive in every sense of that word, right? As a digital consumer, where our digital footprint is effectively our life today, and how we conduct our day-to-day life on a personal level as well as the business side of things. What is the governance going to look like, right? I think there's going to be some sort of a net there or a wall wherein it's got to be enough. When do we get to the point where, hey guys, we got to give this back to the consumer. We're not mining any sort of data, so on and so forth. But I'm gonna leave kind of a potential question that Rob might have regarding the privacy aspect. But wow, that's nuts. I mean, I hadn't even learned about Meta's latest release and how we could just read everything, within the environment.
Yeah, from a security perspective, like I'll give you 3 examples, right? China, the UK, and the United States. So in China, you have no personal rights for all practical sense and purposes. And they've been using CCD cameras all over the country, especially in major metropolitan areas, just ad nauseum. And really, they were at the forefront in terms of the optimization of AI-based, mostly machine learning, but AI-based models to literally pick individuals out and then track those individuals over time. Like, just this one release alone gives them a giant leap forward in capability to both optimize and really get better in-depth tracking across their whole thing. You see the UK do a similar thing, but they have a lot more personal rights there. And then, of course, the US, we have personal rights, plus we don't have anywhere near the amount of cameras. Really, in the future, the really interesting problem you go into is we're going to very soon have the ability to generate so much information at such a high level of detail that really you're going to outstrip your ability to store it. So your biggest limiting factor in terms of security is really what you can store, not so much what you want or legally can store, right? And so that'll be the bigger thing of, okay, I've only got 2 terabytes on my server, relative to my capability. And so I'm going to choose to track these details within the legal limits of my country, company, or whatever it happens to be. But we're very rapidly getting to the point where it's not ability to should we or should we not, it's where do we set the limit, because we're just going to flood ourselves with so much.
Yeah, if you'll notice, Chad and I both started laughing because this week has been dominated by dedicated server conversations that, we're looking to build a 20, 30 megawatt dedicated server. So anyway, you brought up, and just so you know, Chad has this robotic bias, right? So his oldest son is 5, or is he 6?
Yes.
5.
Yes.
He already has them in these robotic academies. Frankly, I think he locks his son in a closet with a bunch of like metal scraps and say, build a robot and figure out how to get out of the closet. So,
you're doing the right thing, Chad. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah. So anyway, military, right? So you're a patriot. You served our country, and I'd like you to go into that background because that's actually part of what you do professionally as well. Point 1. Point 2, in all this dialogue we're talking about, and we can use Meta, Facebook as an example. Look, frankly, I think what Chad and I are involved in the 3D environment space. Meta spent over 10 billion on that and failed. I think for 2 reasons. One, they made it look like a cartoon. Second, I think people are kind of over giving yet another dimension of their life to that particular company, right? What you're talking about intrusion. But anyway, 24.2, I think, is the most recent number. 24.2% of the U.S. economy is connected to the government in some way. So can you speak to what you see going on there, both why don't we talk about the security level? Because I think that the protocols they are demanding, the federal government, is going to affect a lot of people and a lot of businesses.
Yeah, so a lot of great points and interesting things to kind of bite off on there. So first and foremost, just retired in April from just over 23 years of service in the United States Air Force. My last kind of I did roughly 8-9 years and some other stuff before there of primarily innovation-based work across a range of different kind of technology fields. And then my last one, which I did, I was actually the first full-time large language model specialist. So it's a subdomain within generative AI. I was the first large language model specialist for the Chief Data and AI Office for the Department of the Air Force. So that is just a very long way of saying any really interesting generative AI questions that came up from a strategy, policy, or otherwise perspective, kind of up to the headquarters of the Pentagon, those eventually filtered, to myself. Or if you want to say it a more fun way, I was the guy behind the lady, behind the lady, behind the lady. So yeah, that's how that went too.
Yeah. Well, but to that point, so Chad, it's one of these things that whenever I meet military people, especially guys like Brian that are still fit, I'll always fear that like I'm going to say something wrong and they're going to like take a paper clip and just embowel me, right? but Brian's the kind of guy, he's not going to do that. He's going to figure out some way to create some kind of laser that's on my computer camera, and I open it up and it's like going to burn my retina, burning a hole right to the back of my head. So
there was a lot of questions, not quite that individually destructive, but there were a lot of questions like that. That was kind of my job for the better part of 8 or 9 years. And that's really a good way, in a weird way, to kind of define what my career in innovation in the military was really all about. It was, I got really good at doing really strange, unique, hard things that had never been done anywhere else. So it was, hey, we need to do this. Who knows how to do this? Oh, wait, nobody? Just give it to Brian. Brian will figure it out. And there was a lot of that. And you just do that enough successfully, you just keep getting asked to do weirder and weirder and stranger things, which why I got asked to do the generative AI stuff, because again, when it kind of kicked off in early 23, there was a very deep and very experienced core of folks within all the military services that had been doing machine learning. But really, generative AI was nascent, to say the least, and to put it very politely, at the surface at that time. And most of the stuff that was going on was very specific in terms of its application and tool set. And really what I focused on and kind of brought to that, and some of the studies I did, were looking across multiple career fields, multiple use cases, kind of looking at applications broadly. And then that ultimately led to some of the work myself and others were doing, kind of formalized into Task Force Lima, which was the big generative AI task force that was stood up at the OST level, so across all services, to kind of formalize and contextualize how the departments overall wanted to kind of go after generative AI. And they're still to this day doing really great work. All of the things that the DoD is looking to do with generative AI are also falling under and then also applying at the same time of another big initiative, which is Zero Trust, which is all about security as it applies to great power competition and really security concerns as a whole. Up to this point in time, we've really been functioning under a network-centric architecture in terms of how kind of all the systems have been designed. And Zero Trust is really about going from a network-centric architecture to a data-centric architecture, where, much as the name implies, you trust no one anywhere at any time in the system, and you're constantly both encrypting data at rest, in transit, and doing a very high level of authentication across all users at all times. That way, if anything is exposed or broken or cracked in the system in terms of hacking or other intrusions, it's just isolated to whatever that event and that person was. So it's just a way of kind of like isolating down containment if you were to have it, as opposed to, and we've seen plenty of news stories on this, if someone loses a laptop or cracks a password or whatever, all of a sudden everything's exposed and you have to send out these very embarrassing emails of, hey, 46,000 people have all had their data exposed, as opposed to, they cracked one person's password, that's exposed, let's fix that one thing. Zero Trust is really about isolating that down so your exposure space is as limited as possible. But as you can imagine, you have to kind of redo everything, how everything's designed. So that's why Zero Trust is such a major effort. I mean, it's literally billions of dollars across multiple years, both going on now and going into the future. So 2027 is kind of the first big mark there. But you have things like AI and others that are all continuing to kind of march on into the future as they're also trying to implement these security procedures. So you can imagine trying to do this big security overhaul while also trying to integrate, let's call it, all the wonderful technologies of the 21st century. It's a pretty tall order. So there's some really great, patriots and really great technologists all coming together to kind of make those things happen. But despite there not actively being a whole bunch of wars, at least yet, going on, there's a lot going on in the background to try to overhaul the entire architecture of the DoD to kind of move into the 21st century in a major way.
Chad, do you have a follow-up on that? Sorry for the interruption, but this is our shameless plug that if you like the content, like the interviews, please subscribe. And what else should people do, Chad?
Thumbs up, like, and share on all your social media platforms what we do here.
That was really good visual. People are going to be very impressed with how you coordinated your hands with your mouth. That's great.
Thank you. Hand-mouth coordination.
I do. So is this something that the U.S. government foresee being implemented in the commercial world as well, considering that these major leaks that we're talking about are typically centered around telco companies, right? Utility companies, so on and so forth. Do you foresee this kind of rolling into the commercial realm, Zero Trust?
Yeah, actually, I would argue it's almost the inverse, in the sense that Zero Trust really came out of the commercial space, and you could argue things like generative AI are also, the primary development is not in the federal space, it's in the commercial space, and then the DoD is looking, relative to their goals and strategy, how can we pull over the right pieces and the right strategies and the right and then formulate the right policies based on all the great things that are going over in the commercial space to really supercharge and safeguard what we're doing over here. So as an example, there's somewhere around $1 trillion kind of worldwide that have gone from a commercial investment perspective into generative AI. The DoD did not rush out to spend billions, let alone $1 trillion on all that. Again, there's a way to leverage commercial investment, figure out what is, the kind of nuggets that can be best capitalized there, and then strategically partner, buy, purchase, do any number of contract actions to then grab and bring that technology in and apply it in a safe and secure manner for battlefield effects or any number of other things. And it's the same thing with zero trust. Yes, all those networks need to be overhauled, but number one, you want to get the best lessons learned, the best strategy, the best experts. And then, of course, if you can purchase a commercial capability that is modular in such a way that, let's say for ICAM, for authentication of users, if I can just swap out a Microsoft component on the back end of my Azure stack, that will automatically give me all the things I need to be zero trust compliant for that particular function. Great. Why do I want to reinvent the wheel if I can just swap out to a modular piece in the back end? So there's a lot of that of looking at, in terms of the courses of action for implementation, what are the things that kind of give us the best bang for the buck? What is the level of implementation cost to those, both time, people, expertise, and of course money? And then what is kind of the best way forward in terms of an efficient implementation of all those things? So it is definitely not, though there is a piece of it, it's definitely not a military coming up with their own plan. It's really looking to the commercial sector to say, okay, great. What are the best things that we can do that y'all are already doing that we can just bring inside, replicate, and gain the benefits from?
Very nice. So is there a component that within the zero trust initiative, I would imagine with the likes of the level of encryption that's going to be, involved, right? Both at rest and in transit. Is there a crossover, or better way to do it? Is there interaction, between the OS level and the device level, in terms of authentication? Is this something that zero trust also covers? Because ultimately, right, if you don't have access to the device or any sort of at least access to the OS aspect, it's going to be hard for people to fully authenticate that individual.
And just say OS is operating system for all those non-techie people that are sitting there. What the heck is he talking about? Thank you.
Yes, and the short answer is yes. So there are multiple what are referred to as capability peers under the for zero trust strategy writ large, whether it's commercial or DoD. And also, if anybody's interested in learning what the DoD's zero trust policies are, you can go to the DoD CIO's Chief Information Technology Office and download all the strategy documents. They're fully publicly accessible and kind of see what that looks like. But anyway, there are multiple pillars of capability under zero trust. Some are defined to the hardware, others are defined to the ICAM, the user accounts. I mean, it's literally everything in every way that all systems interact. And again, you can be compliant or have capability in certain peers and not in others. There's ways to build in zero trust where you're using primarily cloud-based backends to your functions. It's really about right-sizing the guidance and strategy of zero trust relative to your individual requirements of whether you're a DoD entity or you're even a commercial business. It's all about right-sizing relative to both your stack you have today and kind of the functions you're trying to continue to achieve in the future. So you don't necessarily have to rush out and buy a whole new backend just to be zero trust compliant. If you're already using a bunch of, let's say, SaaS-based or PaaS-based commercial applications on the web, great. There's plenty of commercial applications and components for zero trust that, for the most part, you can kind of swap out and gain a lot of that function. And the DoD is looking at that as part of the applicable pieces, but also where you need to have more localized security, either, as we call it in the military, inside the fence line, so within your own infrastructure, or just for your own individual device as a person. You can go to Dell's website and order a brand new laptop, and you can get functions within that individual laptop that allow you to both encrypt your local hard drive as well as provide additional layers of security for your wireless connections and all kinds of other things. That's the real trick moving forward is why do you want to take any extra or expose yourself to any extra security vectors if you don't have to? So really taking a holistic approach from from your system out. How can we secure that in any way we can?
Nice.
Okay, so Brian, you're an author. You have a book why don't you give us some details on that, and then we'll transition into a final closing question.
Sure. So let's see. Yeah, I got it up here. So I've got 2 books. So I just finished. Well, I had the first one that came out a couple of months ago. This about how to do business with the DoD, and then I literally, and this is kind of my passion project. I just another one which was Military Millionaire. It was about personal finance for the military, because I don't know if you realize this or not. As much kind of benefits and all kinds of other wonderful help that we provide our military members, one of the things that we're definitely could improve upon is personal finance knowledge. We definitely don't teach it in schools, and we're not doing that much better. That we do a better job for our regular military members. But of course, across an entire career, there's all kinds of things that apply at different steps. And that was really what I want to accomplish by that book. So that's literally a free ebook, though you can order if you want a physical copy, you can order one of those off Amazon. But it all goes to, okay, how can you make the most of what you're trying to do? And that's what the first book was about too, but from a commercial perspective. I've got a third book that's going to come out, and it's about how to manage those military innovations, which really the first book is all about the commercial view of that. How do I interact with government? So the opposite side of that is the third book. How does government interact with you from the commercial side to kind of help bring technology and different kinds of capabilities into the force? So I spent 23 years having to figure all this out, both trying to interact with the commercial side and facilitate them as well. So I'm trying to take all that wonderful knowledge that I had the absolute blessing and opportunity to learn, and try to give as much of that back as I can. Because again, ultimately, we just want to enable the nation to be successful, to be secure at the same time, and that a big piece of that is enabling our forces in any and all ways we can.
Well, check out the big brain on Brian, right? So,
well,
right.
in addition to that,
what movie is that from? What line is that from?
Oh, I wouldn't know, Rob.
Oh, come on, that's painful.
I wouldn't know.
Fiction. Samuel L. Jackson. Check out the big brain on Brad. I mean, he said Brad.
Absolutely right.
I mean,
that's absolutely right.
I mean, just to see, Brian, this is why I'm the sage. I got to teach these young people everything.
I like it. I like it.
And I learned something new today. He's also the Dave Ramsey of the military. I mean, that's
there you go. Right.
I don't know. I definitely don't know if I'd go that far, but my big goal there was there were a lot of kind of knowledge gaps that I really had to learn the hard way. And I just wanted, that was my defining line of when was the book done? The book was done when I had a product in terms of the final copy that I felt I would want to have if I was starting my career all over again. And that was really what it was all about, was trying to create something that would give any number of people, even if it was just one more extra tip to kind of be more successful. Because really Dave Ramsey's stuff is really more about how to pull yourself out of a debt hole or out of a better thing versus how do I really achieve beyond that? Like pulling yourself out of the hole is really important, but building yourself into super, high levels of success is a whole nother thing. And as you can imagine, a military career, to kind of use an old adage from, books from way back in the day, was like a choose your own adventure novel. There are so many different ways you can take a career in the military, not just in which service you're in, but whether you go active duty, whether you're guard or reserve, how much time you do there, where you come out on the outside of your career and where does that go? There's so many twists and turns that a career can take. And again, every one of those has their, advantages and pitfalls, and trying to both avoid the pitfalls and kind of build those towards a long, circuitous road to success is really tricky. So the first step to achieving any of that is being armed with as much knowledge as you can.
Yeah. I think that's great. And in order to land this plane, notice I used the Air Force.
I like it.
It's all the little things, Brian. It's the little
Absolutely.
Things. So the land this plane, and let's use the context of, since we're talking about government and commercial, the typical finance executive on the commercial side that they have resources to invest prudently. And what do you, as a business person, right? Because you're coming at this both from the technology side, but you have a passion for business and profitability. What is something you wish they would be paying attention to so they're prudent in their decision making?
Okay, so I'll give you a bonus one. So I'll give you 2.
Nice.
First and foremost, because I literally had a long borderline argument with somebody the other day about this. And this is true whether you're commercial business or DoD. The biggest thing I think you can get an advantage from right up front, literally today, and this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive, is don't spend your money. Just let me dig into that just for a second. What I mean by that is there are tons, literally hundreds at this point, third-party companies who didn't build a model, don't have the resources to fully train a model from scratch, which are really just looking to sell, in some sense, fine-tuning or some kind of optimization of some other company's models or other resources. It's not that doesn't have a value, but think of it this way. If you had to spend $500,000 to $1 million to fine-tune a model to do whatever, you're going to take at least 6 months, probably more, to do that kind of full scope, start to finish. Well, here's the thing. The current development pace of AI models is 6 to 9 months. So for the grand old price of free and just waiting 6 to 9 months, you're going to have a whole new generation of models that will potentially be as good or better than the thing you just fine-tuned, because again, you're fine-tuning off an older baseline, right? So you really have to be extremely judicious if you're going to fine-tune or, heaven forbid, actually build your own model, because you are gambling a very large amount of money that you are going to build something that is so specialized and so performant that it is going to be better than something will come out in 6 to 9 months. You literally hear all the top execs at all the major AI firms, so Sam Altman's most renowned for this, saying, like, don't bet against us. They are, funded to the tune of billions of dollars, and their entire business is built around trying to make better and better models with the best resources that are available, the best personnel, the best hardware resources, everything. I would not take a few hundred million dollars, probably hundred thousands of dollars, and think I'm going to outstrip them, let alone even a few millions of dollars on a low end startup. Like, that's just almost ridiculous to think you're going to spend that money. But again, if you don't know, when you're a business owner and somebody talks you into spending a few $100,000 to do something, it's going to do something. You're going to get something on the back end. But the problem is, like, you didn't need to do that. Yeah. So just learning what to say no to will get you really far in terms of just kind of like waiting these things out. The other thing in terms of like a bonus piece is to understand the differentiation between, like we talked about earlier, kind of the first generation of generative AI systems that we kind of know of today, and kind of what's coming in the next generation. So when people talk about agentic workflows, so agents, really what those agents and those agentic workflows will really need the ability to do and kind of define them as a generation is the ability, like we talked about earlier, to take a major input in terms of like a larger scoped project and just crunch on them themselves and then come back to you with a completed end result product or otherwise output. Right now, with the turn-based systems, I prompt in, it prompts out. I prompt in, it prompts out. With that interactive workflow, you just can't do agentic function. You have to have this ability to give a large, complex problem and then have it crunch and do those multiple roles and multiple iterations itself. When you get there, then you have an ability to really, truly start replacing in large fashion a number of, let's call it, larger use cases that you would hire whole individuals or teams of individuals to accomplish today. That's when you achieve that, when that is unlocked, that is really where you will get massive return on whatever level of investment you as a company or organization put into those systems. But we're just not there yet. So if you're going to buy something, it's really a question of, okay, what can we do today, which is produce long form content or do that kind of customer interaction piece. So if you have a lot of customer service folks and you find that, okay, relative to the cost of those versus what we could pay a model and the kind of the points we would get out of it, that's a good cost benefit analysis. Great, go do that. If you would have otherwise had to contract out or hire a bunch of individuals to produce a bunch of analytics reports or otherwise, great. That's another way to either supercharge that team, or maybe instead of hiring 3 people, we hire 2 and then just supercharge those 2 people with AI. There's levels of efficiency to gain there, but we're really just not at the point where you're going to buy the widget and replace people. It's coming. 100% it's coming, but we are not there yet today. And anybody who tells you we are, I'll go ahead and put my reputation on the line and say they're selling you a pretty decent amount of snake oil. And so that's the key thing is it's coming. It's just we're not here yet. So you want to be prepared for it, but, try to save the money today.
Okay. So, Brian, first of all, thank you for that. I think this speaks to why you are successful as a consultant, because it gets back to what I said in the very beginning, that technology people, they just want to spend your money and spend your human resources. I've never, Chad, I don't know about you, I've never heard of a technology guy saying, just wait, be
Don't spend
patient.
money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it really comes back to, you tell me where somebody's incentives are aligned, and I'll tell you what they're going to do. I don't make any money selling products, so you don't see me endlessly selling products. But at the same time, like, I don't begrudge any third-party AI developer doing that. Like, that's where their money's made. I expect them to try to sell that. But again, just like there are financial investment firms and they sell financial products and they're going to pitch you those financial products, then there are people who are credentialed completely and certified completely differently that are just there to give you advice. Like, that's what I do. I'm just here to give advice. It's what I'm hired to do on the outside in any number of other capacities. And so if you need a problem fixed, I'm going to tell you how to fix a problem. But I'm not here to sell you a specific solution. So I don't have any love lost to saying, hey, you can just wait. It'll be perfectly fine. Now, there's going to come a day, not too far from now, probably just a handful of years at best, where you can literally buy System X and it will literally replace whole people with inside your organization. That'll have a very interesting, and that's kind of debatable in what order of what people and what jobs that will happen, but it's 100% happening. So if you were to fast forward, say, 10, 15 years from now, the average small business of 100 people of 100 or people or less is probably realistically not that 100 people or less. It's 10 or less. And they're all the more senior folks who just, have equity and ownership and otherwise major control of the business, because everything else you're going to very quickly start contracting out to people who can kind of supercharge and perform that same function as an AI enabled workflow. Or you're eventually going to get to a place where you can just literally, your people will be like a SaaS tool is today, where I need finance and budgeting. Boop, I hit a button and all my inputs go there and it's just performed for me. Or I need, just like we do with drop shipping, if you need any number of functions, they're just performed. And that's also how you'll see robots probably integrated in too. Instead of having to have a lot of on-site things, you're going to be able to outsource more and more to companies that just specialize in the physical interaction and creation of any number of things. So you'll see warehouses and manufacturing and all those kinds of things just more and more automated. And then those will be offered up as more and more remote services. So it's not like one day you wake up and all of a sudden the world changed. There's going to be a boiling of a frog here, but the boiling is going to happen a lot faster than people realize. It's not going to be like a 40-year transition. It's probably going to be more like a 10 to 20-year transition.
Yeah. Well, I don't doubt that. In fact, the 10-person company is going to be 10 people, and then Chad's youngest son, who's 5 now, so by the time he's 12, he's going to be building the robots and and taking over the world. So anyway, Brian, you're a good man. We thank you for your time. Look forward to keeping in touch, and Godspeed to you. Thanks for your service to the country.
Thanks so much. I really
Brian.
appreciate the time. Thanks.
Yeah. Talk soon.
Thank you.